couple of years ago now, we got the first installment in what's become one of Dreamworks' new big franchises of the 2020s, and that is The Bad Guys. Released in 2022, the film was, in my opinion, some of the studio's best work in years, and really made me excited about Dreamworks again after not particularly caring about them due to a pretty lackluster back half of the 2010s. In my eyes, it was just an instant classic, with a really solid script filled with laughs, a goofy and easy to understand plot that doesn't become pretentious and try to take itself too seriously, a really talented voice cast, and a very, very exciting, distinct and dynamic animation style. It really did have everything going for it, and I think the wider world agreed. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a pretty universal acclaim, with an 88% critical score off of 171 reviews, and then an audience score of 93% off of over 2,500 reviews. I will admit though, that's a pretty low number of reviews for a film like this from an audience point of view at least, which I think ties back into the fact that not as many people saw this film as I would have originally expected based on its quality. It only grossed around $250 million, although it did have a lower budget of up to $80 million. It's a far cry from the glory days of the studio where films like Shrek were raking in the big bucks, but I suppose it's something at the very least. Regardless, Dreamworks has been chugging along in the background, actually releasing some really good content in the last couple of years, even if the box office has not always been following along with them. Of course, after this we got a bunch of spin-off material to bridge the gap that was generally of dubious quality when compared to the original. 2023 saw the release of The Bad Guys Holiday Special, which was honestly pretty bad overall, and then last year we had The Bad Guys Haunted Heist, which whilst not on the level of the film itself was actually pretty decent. We had known that a sequel movie was coming at some point for this franchise. They had indicated they were interested when they first released the first movie, and then early last year I think it was, they made it official that they'd been working on it. This in turn led to a trailer later last year which I made a video on and which I quite liked. Now a couple months on, and we have another trailer for The Bad Guys 2, this time showing off more of the character motivations rather than just the pure story like last time. That's what we're going to be looking at today. The Bad Guys 2 Trailer 2. Let's jump into it. Okay, so the trailer starts off with a clip that we'd already seen from a previous trailer, where I'm pretty sure the idea was that the bad guys had broken into a tower to steal a car. The major theme of the trailer and the one before it is that the bad guys have been out of action, and I'm pretty sure they did a jump cut from them stealing this car and Wolf declaring he'll never drive another, to him driving this little blue beater car. This makes me expect that the car scene where they steal this nice one is going to be at the start of the movie to show where they were as criminals and how they were massively successful and living large, but how things haven't really been going their way since they went straight. How they pretty much do the same thing here with the freeze frame and Wolf talking to the audience getting out of his little car. I suppose there's going to be a 5 to 10 minute opening sequence to get the blood pumping and then have you excited so kids don't get bored having to sit through a lot of talking and exposition right from the get-go when the movie begins. Rather clever when you think about it. The next chunk of the trailer reaffirms what the first one was laying down, that the bad guys are not doing well in their new reformed civilian lives. We see Piranha try to apply for a job as a security guard, and it goes so badly that he seemingly farts out of anxiety. I'll admit that I find the odd bit of toilet humor as funny as the next guy, but in this trailer alone, they have Piranha fart out of fear in an enclosed environment twice. I just hope they don't overuse that type of gag to the point that it's no longer funny. Moving on, at the same time, we see Wolf get rejected from a position working at the bank. He has a terrible resume, by the way, so bad that it's almost endearing. He openly states on it that he has no email because he can't afford the internet, admits that his only education is his life of crime, and under his skills he mentions being a mastermind of heist, which he then scratches out and replaces with customer service. Honestly, this is such a funny little gag. The resume itself is only on screen for a couple of seconds at best, and yet they went out of their way to make it as goofy and fun as possible just for the fast readers or people who freeze frame. Legit could have just copy-pasted some generic resume there, but they bothered to make it funny, and for that they have my respect. It's the little things that really complete movies like this, and so far they seem to be on top of that. Really fun dialogue in this sequence too, with Wolf completely tone deaf to the situation, telling the guy running the interview that some of his best memories have been in banks, before the dude replies saying, "Yes, you've robbed us 3 times. The trailer keeps down this path for a couple of more scenes, with the idea that nobody trusts them despite the fact that they've actually changed. So they're unemployed and struggling with money. Here's where we meet the bad girls, who kidnap the bad guys and threaten them into helping with what they claim is going to be the biggest heist in history, which based on visual clues is going to be stealing a rocket. However, now we get to the actual plan. In the first trailer, it seemed the idea would be the bad guys are forced to go along with things and then get in trouble for it and have to clear their own name. Here, in Wolf's conversation with Diane though, it becomes clear that they're doing their best to avoid that, and they're going to use this as an opportunity to rehab their image by being the ones who foil the plot and therefore save the day. Honestly, it's actually a rather clever plan of theirs. However, the bigger takeaway from this scene is that we're going to get some more Diane and Wolf scenes and plot. That was probably the biggest absence from the initial trailer that actually had me a bit worried. That she wasn't going to be heavily involved in the story and would simply drop in and out to give Wolf some romantic scenes and maybe help them in the final climactic moments. It's the kind of thing that can happen sometimes, where the love interest gets sidelined and waits at home for the hero to come back after saving the day. I'm glad it's not happening here though. Her dynamic with Wolf and pushing him to be better and reform like she did was one of the core components of the first movie, and so to reduce that would be the wrong call. In fact, it seems like she's going to be heavily involved based on what we see after this. The first part was only a brief training scene with her and Wolf, but next up we actually get to see a bit of action from her too. She jumps off a cliff with a cool winged jetpack thingy. I guarantee this is going to be her getting the news that something's happened to the bad guys, and off she goes to try to save them. We follow this up with another shot of the bad guys with Diane walking in slow motion, all dressed in matching black tie. There's not really much to learn from this other than it's obvious they've teamed up and are working together. Just really honing in on the fact that they're allies and the bad guys are now good. Also, I really like the Reservoir Dogs reference here. It was fun. It seems that they need to infiltrate a wedding at some point, as we get a repeat from the last trailer with arguably one of the funniest moments this franchise has ever seen, where Shark promises the tied-up florist that he's going to play him respectfully, only to use the most cliché Italian accent imaginable, complete with hand gestures. It's so simple and yet so effective at getting me to laugh every single time. The sequence continues where you basically get a reintroduction to each of the characters and their personal strength in the group. So we just had Shark and his ability to enter any venue with his perfect disguise, followed up by Tarantula and her ability to hack into any security system. Looks like she's pretty shocked at some new tech, so I can only presume that Diane's coming with the goods because Lord knows she couldn't afford something like that at the moment, and the only other option would be her inventing it, which, if that was the case, she wouldn't be shocked. Now I'm starting to think that the bad guys have been hired as undercover spies a la Despicable Me 2. I really liked that movie, so if the plot follows a similar outline, I'm kinda cool with that. It also seems like she's infiltrating a large apartment complex or a facility of some kind. I think it looks disconnected to the wedding heist, so it seems the bad guys keep very busy in this movie, which is good. Next up we have Snake, who's dressed ready for an 80s jazzercise class, but no, he's going to Vinyasa? I have no idea what he's trying to say. Anyway, he's the supposed muscle of the group, which I guess makes sense. I never really had a specific role in mind for him from the first film, except for being the edgy, annoyed one, hellbent on staying a criminal. The idea that he's exercising to get fit is really funny to me, and one that I definitely think is connected to his newfound romance with Doom the Raven. That's going to be an interesting dynamic, I think. I mean, he was the lead that wanted to not turn good, and now here we are in the second movie with him having the romantic attachment to a villain that they're actively trying to stop. Is that going to interfere and cause friction? I worry it might, and that would feel a bit repetitive to the first movie, but considering everything else looks good, I'm hopeful. After that, we have Piranha's tirade about tearing whoever it is limb from limb until all they can remember is pain. Honestly, this, alongside Wolf's concern and affirmation, is peak kids' humour. I love it. Also, Piranha, I think you might need therapy. Crazy how he goes from being an anxious farter to a fish hellbent on violence. He needs a middle ground. This also spawned in my mind the idea that I'd love to see an origin film of the bad guys, when they were kids and seeing how they turned out the way they did. I have a feeling they've been friends for a very long time, so it would be nice to see. It would also be a fun way to keep some of the villainous / bad guy antics for another story. I now realise that this is basically the premise of Minions 2, and I'm quickly realising how closely these stories align. Yet they're different enough that it doesn't feel too noticeable. Take notes, Dreamworks. We all know you could use some of that Illumination money. Next up, we get the release date for the 1st of August, which I don't think has changed, and that's always a welcome sign. I hate when you watch the initial trailer and then the next one has the new release date that's delayed, so this is a small win for me. Following from that though, there's a longer scene where Wolf and the gang are riding in a helicopter being flown by the police chief from the previous movie alongside the rocket. I assume this is where the bad girls have figured out that the bad guys were spying on them and broke off the partnership, but were still committed to stealing the rocket. I'd assume that because there was an initial scene where it seemed like they were going to do the heist together that the bad guys intentionally sabotaged. I wonder if the bad girls got captured at that point, escaped, and now this is happening. That's just my assumption at this rate. Anyway, I think the police chief flying the helicopter and working together with the bad guys all but proves my theory that they've been hired as spies. The crew jumps onto the rocket without spacesuits, although I must admit that's probably the least of their concerns at that moment in time. Much more could go wrong before they launch into the stratosphere. I assume Tarantula managed to craft some spacesuits that could form around them with some tiny, complex contraption. The next clip shows them jumping off part of the rocket that's detached onto the main capsule. How they survive this is mind-boggling to me. Don't worry, I can already hear you. Smarty Pants, why are you questioning whether that makes sense? Is a world filled with humans, anthropomorphic animals, and regular animals with an evil billionaire guinea pig? It doesn't matter. Well, guess what? It matters to me. Can you imagine the force that would be unleashed from that detachment? Also, they're practically in outer space and they're still not wearing spacesuits. People die climbing Mount Everest from lack of oxygen. How are these people still living? Never mind managing to actually make the distance. I reckon I'd be loads of fun in the writer's room. Don't you? Luckily for them, Snake's Pilates alternative Vinyasa comes in handy and he manages to launch them all forward to the capsule door. Only they're trying to open it the wrong way, which did make me laugh. I wonder if they get in, because later we see them in spacesuits outside, so maybe if Tarantula didn't pack them and they actually made a deal with the bad girls and have to go back out to check on something with the rocket. Not sure. All I know is that it shouldn't be possible anyway. Not from what I watched with that SpaceX landing a couple of months ago. They needed drills to get the door open. I know, I'm sorry, I'll stop. Yep, so my assumption was correct. They do manage to get in and have been sent back out to do some work. I assume they'll need to fix something so they can return to Earth. I wonder if they damaged something when they were trying to stop them and that's why they've been sent out to repair it. Or maybe Professor Marmalade betrayed the bad girls and so they need to fix whatever sabotage he set up. Not sure, but stupidly, they're untethered. And so when Piranha unleashes his second anxious fart in the span of 2 minutes, they begin to float away because Snake can no longer hold onto the ship, due to being poisoned by toxic fumes. I mean, come on! Have they learned nothing from 2013's Gravity? Ugh, that scene still gives me the creeps. It's also unfortunate that Snake was sent out on this mission. He'd be the least dexterous person to hold onto the ship. That's why being tethered's so important. Also, when he's floating around in front of the bad girls and there seems to be chips swirling in space, I couldn't help but remember that classic Simpsons space episode. I'm sure that's going to end up being some sort of reference, and I'm all here for it. And so that's the end of the trailer, and I, for one, am very excited. It somehow gave us more information, but I still feel as if I have very little to go on. I'm very happy about that. Especially when you get into the second trailer, sometimes you feel as though you've already seen the movie. Not here, though. There's still so much we don't know, and considering they replayed a lot of the jokes from the first trailer, I'm sure there's going to be many more we'll get to experience fresh watching the movie for the first time. I really hope this does a good box office for Dreamworks. They need it, and deserve it, honestly. I've also just realised that the Australian release date isn't until the 18th of September. Once again, Dreamworks screwing me around, just like with Dogman. Don't expect a review from me until then, unfortunately. With all that being said, though, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of The Bad Guys 2? Are you excited for it? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.